Buonasera, and welcome to tonight's Sunday show with me, Conor AI. This is the New York experience. I'm in the capital of Moldova, hence why I've got this polo shirt on this evening. And I've been covering Moldova quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 years, for sure, since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. I did have some videos also about this country before, but it was not the main focus, of course. And tonight we're going to be discussing summer 2026. Your Irish boy still doesn't have a suntan because I was doing a lot of work when I was back in Odesa before I came up here to Chișinău. But when I get back to Odesa, I'm looking forward to hanging out at the seaside. The forecast for the next few weeks is basically a few thunderstorms, but otherwise it's going to be sunny, great weather. We did have a heat wave in Europe recently, most of the continent. It was up to, I think, 40 degrees in a lot of Poland, which is unusual, but in Odessa, I think it was 36 degrees Celsius, which is really hot, but we are by the seaside, and it's not that much hotter than it gets to at certain points of the summer. Anyways, here in Chișinău, most summers, there's been a few days that I've been here, that has gone up to 40 degrees Celsius in any case. So I don't think we were exceptionally hit by it, and basically everything was working pretty much as normal in the countries that I cover, with the exception of Poland, because yeah, they don't normally get that kind of heat. I see there is a first question there in the comment section. As we are going through tonight's live stream, I'll start with a little bit of an overview, then a presentation, and I will come to the Q&A in due course, so you can drop your comments and questions down below, and we'll have a conversation. Sandvin, I guess is his name, says, hi there, never been to Moldova, is it easy getting the day trip to Transnistria from there, maybe organized? Yeah, I don't recommend really going to Transnistria. I don't think it's that interesting. I have been there. I would say that I've been there many times in the past, and it is kind of collapsing economically. So yeah, it is a separatist de facto part of Moldova that probably will stop being separatist and de facto independent, not de jure, not legally, very soon, because the economic situation is so dire, and they have their own currency and some of the trappings of the former Soviet Union that you don't tend to see in the rest of the region. Like they have a flag that has a summer sickle on it, if I remember. Actually, I know the colors of the Transnistrian flag, but I don't remember if actually they have the emblem there or not. Yes, they do. They have the Soviet star and the hammer and sickle. So you can see all that kind of paraphernalia in light of the Russian 2022 invasion of Ukraine, celebrating all things Soviet. Kind of getting out of vogue, I think, to a certain extent, but you can go there. I just don't think it's going to be that interesting, but then again, I've been there many times, so I don't really think it's a nice part of Moldova to go to. You can also go to Belts, it's a city in the north, about the same size as Tiraspol, and yeah, it's probably not quite as poor, but it has some ugly architecture there as well. I've been there many years ago. I watched a vlog recently, and it didn't seem like the central architecture had improved that much. So yeah, the reason I come to Moldova is not really to go to Transnistria, but I guess if you're really keen to see it, then it's likely to disappear. That is my prediction in the coming years, just out of being pragmatic. It just doesn't have an economic future. It was been subsidized, I guess, sponsored by Moscow, but you know, it's kind of cut off basically with Ukraine on one side, and obviously Russia invaded, not just in 2014, also in 2022, and the Moldovans are increasingly making overtures to them that they should rejoin Moldova in all senses, especially because Moldova has EU candidacy status and will possibly join the European Union very soon. Their target date is 2030. Normally countries miss their target date, but realistically they could enter in the next 5 years. So for the Transnistrians, they probably want to get in on all that increased economic development that's just going to be, and at the moment their GDP per capita is about a quarter of the rest of Moldova, plus or minus, and it used to be richer than the rest of Moldova, so it's really an economic basket case from that point of view. But anyways, I don't want to talk too much about Transnistria for today's purposes. If you're new to this channel, then my name once again is Conor AI, and I help ambitious men with making the most of the opportunities that are here in the region I call New Europe, which ensures the region between Germany and the Russian Federation in reality, I help my clients with a smaller number of countries. They are this country where I am this evening, Moldova, Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Kazakhstan. Also, I filmed a bit in Romania. Those are the countries that I document here on my channel. And basically, a lot of the guys I'm helping are high-level men. They are looking to gain a, I would say, unfair advantage in a way, but life isn't fair, with a lifestyle arbitrage. So that can be relocating, not maybe 100% of the year, but part of the year here, investing in real estate, which is very attractive, maybe starting a business. They get to take advantage of the better value for money in this region. And most of my clients start off single. Obviously, huge number of them do meet their significant other, or they have already met them beforehand, before they become my client. And that is something that I also help my clients with a lot. It's like socializing and the whole, to navigate the whole dating scene here, because obviously there's a huge upside, but unfortunately with the cultural differences, and in the past there was a lot of scamming and stuff, there's a lot of things that you need to avoid to be successful and have that real man mindset as I described it. So in a nutshell, that's what I help you with, and they're the topics that we will focus on today, because we're going to look at summer 2026. Basically, I said it in the last live stream as well, I think maybe even previously, I focus on helping winners win more. So the corollary to that is I don't try to turn losers into winners, but you will definitely be able to gain massively from the opportunities here if you position yourself strategically and early enough. And we're going to deal with some of the big opportunities that are in the short term in this region, in particular in Ukraine, on tonight's live stream. Again, if you're watching this on replay or right now, then drop your comments and your questions down below. I will also see the questions on the replay as well. So just a few housekeeping updates, I guess, from when we had the last live stream Sunday show. That was about a month ago. I was down in Odesa on the shores of the Black Sea. And I've been working quite a bit with my New York Insider AI. It's been dubbed Conor AI by my clients who are using it. And yeah, it is pretty impressive. I think it's a great tool in particular because you can answer the questions 24/7 and you can basically ask it anything you want. And it will search through my materials and summarize and give you a pretty great answer, I have to say, having tested out, and I am improving it all the time because I can see how effective it is at answering the questions and what I would say. So if you go and you ask, say, ChatGPT, even if you ask what I would say, it's better than a Google search for sure. I put it like 20 or 30%. I was a bit shocked. I thought it would be a lot better. And this because it's specifically trained on my materials, and I can obviously correct it over time as well. It is just way more accurate, and it will really be of benefit to you. You can go and subscribe to it per month. There's a link down below, just in the chat and also in the description to this video, to this live stream. And also it's bundled in with my consulting calls, and that is the most powerful combination because then you get benefits of both options. You have me delve deep into the goals that you're trying to achieve to give you a strategic overview and a plan for implementation. And also I can decide in edge cases. And after that, you have the post-call support with the Conor AI. So definitely go and check it out down below. As an update to my in-person immersion, yes, I've changed the application process. So if you didn't apply before July 1st, then you can see all the terms updated on that page. So if you're interested in coming in person with me, then we can see if it's a good fit to work together. And the information on the application process is down below in the description. So just a few short anecdotes before I get into tonight's live stream. I have a few notes here. Yeah, about real estate. I probably could have saved this for the presentation, but one thing that has come up from my time in Odesa is the fact that now is more interest in buying especially seafront properties in Odesa on the shores of the Black Sea. So the prices are starting to go up in that particular sector. I was telling you all who were here last summer about just the great opportunities there in Ukraine. So you should have listened to me last year if you were going to buy your seaside property. A lot of that is down to the fact that in this Russia-Ukraine war is now seeping into the mainstream. Obviously, you're watching me here, you would have known it already a year ago, that Russia is in a world of trouble in this war, and they are not going to realistically get anywhere near a city like Odesa in the foreseeable future. And that was something that a lot of people who watched, I guess, all media and all mainstream media didn't really understand last year, but it's kind of seeping through. Now you can see a lot of foreign investors coming in, a lot more than last year. And that is my update before we get into the presentation about that. Yeah, it was actually funny when I was in Odesa because my video editor, the original video editor, who was the genius behind many of those vlogs from about when he started working in 2017, and then actually his partner, she also did a lot of my editing as well then later on. I actually met them out at a cocktail bar about 2 weeks ago in Odesa, and it was kind of a funny interaction in many ways because he was asking, well, do lots of the guys who are single who watch your channel, are they all coming to Ukraine? And I said, no, I think very few of them are actually going to come when there's still a war, and I understand people obviously have reservations. And then he was like, but look at this bar, how can they not come? I thought it was just a funny thing. And reaction, I was like, yeah, but the bottom line is that most of you, especially you guys who've been regulars on these live streams, you're very hesitant about coming. You're all planning to come immediately when it ends, along with probably about 500,000 to 1 million foreign male single visitors. So good luck with that strategy because, well, those that come when the action is going on at the moment, well, they don't have that foreign competition when they go out to the cocktail bar for sure in Odesa. Just thought it was kind of interesting, his reaction. He was a bit shocked that guys just aren't willing to come, but I said, yeah, for most of them, it's too big a psychological barrier, even though they will presumably go to Medellin in Colombia, where statistically, it looks to me at least that you're in a lot more danger if you're a single male foreign visitor, especially when used as a dating app, than if you go to Odesa during the Russo-Ukrainian war. Better chances of coming away unscathed. The statistical danger, I'll go to more when we get to the presentation, is not very high. It is more the psychological barriers I've been saying on these live streams for quite a while. I've noticed that I now have a lot more clients who are interested, especially with the consulting calls, with moving to Riga, so that is interesting that there's a bit of a lag. I guess I pioneered that when I was going back in 2023 and I was shooting content there with my clients who were in those videos, both Daniel and Paul, who were featured, and we were having, you know, a great time. Again, it was before the hordes of the horny foreigners started to flock back after COVID. At the time, I guess Riga is less and less a hidden gem, still a great spot, and I will go into why later on, especially with real estate opportunities if you are a non-EU citizen, because you can get residency through a real estate investment of 250,000 euros or more. So I think that's kind of, yeah. I also put in the thumbnail for tonight's live stream. You can see that even though it's not named, this outline that is Belarus. I got a few questions, more from friends than for, actually one client did ask me as well about going to Belarus. As I said on these live streams and in my videos, for many years, the best of Belarus has already left. So I'm not sure why it's suddenly become a topic again. Even the content creators who, some of them I met and filmed with, who are foreigners, I think all of them left, as far as I know. They just don't live in Belarus anymore. The situation is quite tricky there. There aren't that many opportunities. First of all, real estate is relatively more expensive than you would think, because a lot of Russians are trying now to strategically position themselves out of the Russian Federation and are buying up property in Minsk. So it's kind of attracted a lot of, I guess, a significant number of Russians who have money, presumably men, who come in and bought, for the most part, who've come up and bought a lot of real estate and are trying to get there because they live a little bit freer than they would in the Russian Federation, which obviously has, you know, it's not quite maybe totalitarian yet, but it's on the way there, whilst Belarus is kind of a lighter version of authoritarianism at the moment. The geopolitical situation doesn't look particularly good for Belarus. They have obviously been assisting Moscow with their illegal and heinous invasion of Ukraine, and Lukashenko is not in a great position because he's under a lot of pressure to assist Putin, but Zelensky made it pretty clear that if he continues to do it, then there will be repercussions. So we don't know for how much longer that actually even Belarus would stay relatively untouched by the Russo-Ukrainian war. It could very easily get dragged into it. So there's a lot more tension geopolitically, and there isn't really much going on in the country, and a lot of the young people have left. Most of the young people who speak English, for example, who are over 25, finished their university. They typically do not stay in Belarus. They apply for a visa to go to Poland or Lithuania, and they get nearly all accepted, and they move, and they don't come back. So it's not really a country where things are that interesting anymore, even though Minsk is like 3 times bigger, or at least twice as big, it should be almost 3 times bigger than Chișinău. There's way more going on here in terms of cafes, bars, clubs, nightlife than in Belarus. And I get lots of intel from Belarus, still from foreigners there, from also people who are Belarusian. And yeah, I just don't even know why it's worth talking about, to be frank, at the moment. But it came up a few times, so just to explain once again why I don't recommend it. And then we got the whole additional hassle of getting there. You can't fly directly from most of the places that you guys are at, and it's just like a huge amount of extra effort for, I'm not seeing really the upside in going there. And that has been the situation for quite a while. Let me make sure that everything is working here. Just looking at your questions. Good evening, says Silans. Okay, someone's asking about Moldova and Central Europe. Okay. We'll come to your questions in due course. So, maybe you decide, there was a song by Blur, just occurred to me now, and it was like, I can't think of the name of it, maybe I need to search it. It was like Boys Who Like Girls. Is that the name of the song? This is a very old British Britpop song. Let me see if it was called Girls and Boys. I think that was it. 1994. So you can see it's obviously an oldie and a goldie. But let me see if the lyrics are here. There was something about following the herd down to Greece on holiday, and then a lot of hedonism going on. So maybe you are also following the herd down to somewhere else around the world. Maybe it's Medellin in Colombia, maybe it's somewhere in the US, going down, I don't know, Miami, for example, or you're doing what most Western Europeans do, which probably go to somewhere sunnier, so on the Mediterranean, like going to Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, as Blur were singing about back in the early 90s. And that is not the part of Europe where the opportunities are nowadays. Now, that's not to say that there's something wrong with those countries. I always love traveling to Italy. I always have a special place in my heart, for example. But these are more mature economies. They're not like the economies in, say, Poland, which now I guess everybody has figured out is going to be an economic behemoth in the region. It has been developing quite dramatically in the last 20 to 30 years since the end of communism, and that is why we have this opportunity still. The economies in this region were held back by communism for how much longer they in power, depending on where you were. I mean, they came to power in obviously the late teens, 1920s in part of the region, and then after World War II in the rest of it. So they had at least 45 years been held back by those governments compared to the development we saw in Western Europe, obviously in North America in that time. But they are catching up, some quicker than others, depending on normally it's the governance, and corruption being a major problem in some parts of the region. And that is why it still has more of an upside. There is varying degrees of risk and where they are in terms of their development story. So you're not getting in early if you go invest in Poland, but Poland still has a lot of potential to grow, but it is further along. Like obviously if you had invested in Poland 15 years ago, you'd have made out like a bandit there. And if you look at it today, people would have told you you're not to invest in Poland 15 years ago, it's bored, backwards, corrupt. It was never as corrupt as like further east anyways, and look at it now. And some of the other countries are on that level, so that would be Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, plus or minus. They're also in the European Union. Any of the countries that are on the path to join the European Union that I cover as well, like here in Moldova. So that is why I talk about this region in particular and why it's a bit different. It is not the mainstream yet. Even Poland is still not quite mainstream. It is getting there. And one of the differences, I mean, there are many differences. It's not just that there's kind of more runway for economic development. So if you get in now, then obviously as the country's economic fortunes improve over the next decade to 2 decades, which we can't say 100%, but that's the trajectory that they're on. Then obviously your wealth will also grow and live a lifestyle that might be as accessible in, say, Western Europe as North America. Taxes in general are not as high in this region. It's not really a tax haven per se, but in general there are. I mean, I was out with a businessman yesterday who's a foreigner, and yeah, we're actually talking about how EU accession, he needs to know if there'll be a derogation from the state aid rules about the tax incentives at the IT park here in Chișinău. But for the next 5 years, he doesn't really have to worry about that, and might even get a derogation so he could have those tax benefits for 10 years. But these are some of the incentives that there are here where you can obviously save more of your money and then reinvest it, and just in general it's a pretty good place in terms of investing. Real estate is another big attraction because as real estate has become also more expensive here in this region, but it's going to be expensive in so many places in the world. A lot of Moldovans have EU passports, somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2, and a lot of them work in my home country of Ireland. And if you arrive as an immigrant in Ireland, the chances of getting on the property ladder and actually buying a house, I guess it's possible, but it is extremely arduous as a journey. Whilst you could work there for 5 to 10 years, lots of Moldovans that have done this, and then they come and they just buy an apartment, a nice apartment in their home country, and then along this side they come home because then it kind of makes sense. They got the experience abroad, and they see that this country is definitely improving a lot. There is a lot of, I think if you're traveling during the summer, because we're going to focus on summertime in today's Sunday show, a lot of Western Europe has the issue of over-tourism. I actually, before I had this particular focus on the channel, probably about 10 years ago, I had a video on over-tourism and what was happening with it and the effects it was having in terms of even livability in the city centers in a lot of great Western European cities. Over-tourism in general is something you don't have to worry about in this region. Now, of course, in the height of summer, there will still be a lot of tourists who live and go to Polish cities, also the Europe Baltics, like going to Lithuania. They all have beautiful town centers like Riga, Tallinn, and Estonia, but it's not going to be like going to Paris or Italian city where it's just like madness during the summer. Also in Southern Europe, it does tend to get hotter as well. So it's a little bit problematic if you are queuing to get into the Louvre or the Uffizi Museum in Florence. Don't have to worry about that kind of experience here. It's less discovered, again, depending on which country you choose. If you decide to go to, say, Transylvania, one of my favorite places to go, it's no longer undiscovered. Like with Instagram and information, it travels around the world a lot easier nowadays. So there are definitely way more foreign tourists than it used to be 20 years ago, but it's still not going to be as over touristic as parts of Western Europe. And yeah, a lot of times the bureaucracy is actually simpler here. They just decided to make it digital quicker, and they got rid of a lot of the red tape. That doesn't mean bureaucracy in certain aspects cannot be problematic in this region, but a lot of Western European countries in particular, maybe it's a little bit better in the US with bureaucracy nowadays, but they are actually a little bit more behind. The things that maybe are disadvantages here in New York or the countries that I cover are the infrastructure, although if you look at Poland, it's maybe arguable they have almost better infrastructure than a lot of Western European countries and North America. At this point, they're not far off it, but if you come to a place like Moldova, again, it's down to your preferences. It is going to be way behind in terms of infrastructure, but again, it is catching up relatively fast. So we're watching the center of gravity in the European Union, so Europe, using European Union is kind of a shorthand to say Europe. It has been moving gradually over the last decade from west, more eastwards. It's not like it's going to redistribute all to the east, but if you look at the economic power, it is not as lopsided clearly as it was 30 years ago with the end of communism in the crazy 90s, where they had to adjust to becoming more capitalist societies. So that's what I see, the center of gravity is moving in this way from Western Europe to Central and Eastern Europe. And I remember I saw, it was a graph one of my clients, I think it's a couple of years ago, and he was saying, look, America, he was talking about how some graph showing US GDP per capita and European countries. And actually, he just sent me a very selective graph. Remember, it was just showing Western European countries. And look, the Americans are pulling away. But I said, man, that's not all of Europe or the European Union. You're leaving out the part of Europe that is booming basically for the last 20 years. Like Poland is not in your graph. And that's because the person who probably sent you the graph was trying to be a little bit deceptive about what's really going on, because there has been a redistribution within the European continent because this part of Europe was held back. So there's just a lot of incentives to move and deploy capital from west to east, because obviously you can grow things from a lower cost base. So that's what we've seen. We've seen that redistribution across Europe. So not like all of Europe is lagging so far behind in terms of its trajectory compared to North America. It's that within Europe itself, the economies in Western Europe haven't grown as fast as the economies in Central and Eastern Europe. So that's just something to be aware of, that, you know, I think there's an expression, lies, damn lies, and statistics. You can kind of find a statistic to, even Putin finds ways of trying to manipulate statistics, claiming he's winning in the war. Well, so I think everybody has figured out that that's definitely not the case. As I said, it slipped into the mainstream that Russia is losing. So why pick the summer to come? In this region, it is not the tropics, so the winters are darker and longer and colder, and often can be sub-zero temperatures. And obviously when you come to summer, it's the opposite. So the weather is nicer. Here we've had a heat wave, so maybe it's even a little bit too hot and optimal in some parts, but obviously people are out more on the streets, and you see the cities in bloom with all the vegetation around, and it's obviously got longer evenings, and people are out doing more social things, and it just looks nicer. Now, if you are planning, I think if it's going to be a first trip to the region, then definitely try to come during the summer, because it'll just be lower friction to come than coming in the winter where maybe there's ice everywhere and it's dark, and it'll probably feel a little less welcoming. If you are planning a relocation, then I would caution against only coming in the summer, because you also want to sample a little bit of the winter, or at least the autumn and the spring, to understand what it would be like the rest of the year before you commit yourself to one place year-round if you're planning a full relocation. Of course, evaluating the nightlife, the cafes, outdoor culture. If you're a single guy, then obviously the dating in summertime, people are out and showing, well, they're dressed with more revealing clothing in general, so they'll probably tickle your fancy a bit more, and the quality of life probably feels a lot higher during the summer. I can say that after a winter, the past winter, which was one of the most oppressive in Ukrainian history for like half a century, I think, that definitely feel a lot more positive. You've probably seen that also on these live streams in the last couple of months since the weather has improved. So just to briefly discuss a few of the countries that I help my clients with before I go to the Q&A. It won't be as long as some of the other Sunday shows. As I said, there's a higher opportunity cost, and I have other things to do this evening. Brazil are playing in the soccer, for example, and I'm going to enjoy that actually outdoors on a huge screen. So we will get quickly into why Poland is a smart place for someone who's probably coming to the region the first time, at least to land there, and it's kind of an easier gateway because it is way more developed, has great infrastructure, it's the strong economy, it's the big city of Warsaw, 2 to 3 million people, there are a lot of international companies there, there's modern infrastructure, as I said, so it will feel less of a challenge to arrive in Warsaw, and then you can branch out basically into other places in the region. That's what I would say. I did have a consulting call with an American, I can't remember how old he was, but anyways, he was under 30 for sure, and he hadn't been to the region. He's going to come, actually, he said next spring, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I was arranging that he'll land in Warsaw and then he branches out, because it's a first trip. If you're going to come, and I'm not sure if he's going to come with friends or if he's going to end up coming on his own as a solo trip, then it's probably going to be an easier initial few days at the beginning if you go to Warsaw. So one of the things to point out about Warsaw, maybe go to Krakow, or another Polish city like Gdansk, which I actually almost went to a couple of weeks ago. If I'd known about a conference being on earlier, I would have gone to it, but okay, I know that for the next time. The, shall we say, value for money, still going to be better value for money, so you're comparing the same service or good compared to a Western European city of around the same size, or in North America, it's still going to be probably 20% cheaper, we'll say, more or less. But it's not going to be pennies on the pound, cents on the dollars. It's not a passport road destination. I have a video about that. Maybe I'll drop it down in the description up on a card. I'm going to check this in the next day or two to put in the timestamps. I'll add it in if it's not down there. Otherwise, it's on my channel. It's one of the videos from last year why passport roads should not go to Poland or the New York Baltics, because it's not super cheap there. And if you're looking for a cheap Europe, then there aren't too many places that are really cheap in that sense, compared to maybe going to somewhere in Southeast Asia, to Africa, or to parts of Latin America. It is better value, but it is not crazy cheap, definitely not in Poland, and I would say the same for Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Now, if you come to Moldova, and I always use my flat white index, people say, I don't drink flat white. Well, you should start drinking flat white, because I think it's the best coffee drink to go for. It's pretty similar to a cappuccino, and I use it because I think it was The Economist magazine just out the Big Mac index, and I don't eat fast food personally, so I'm not going to notice the price of the Big Mac changing as I go from city to city and country to country. But I do drink normally 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 flat whites per day, so I can definitely tell you the price difference, and the quality being the same. I like artisanal coffee. So here in Chișinău today I paid €3.35, so that's probably about €3.60 in USD. And like if I was in a similar city in Western Europe, would I even get it for €4.50? Nowadays, maybe it'd be €5. Definitely a bigger city like in Dublin, it would be about €5, I would expect. So there you see, it is in Warsaw, it's probably about €4.20, €4.30, maybe even €4.50. So you can see it is definitely better value for money, because it's basically the same product, the same coffee, sometimes even the same brand of coffee that I've been served. It is maybe 30% cheaper here in Chișinău than it's going to be in Warsaw, and it's going to be more expensive again in parts of Western Europe, so maybe an extra 10% more expensive on that particular metric. So the only metric, obviously, you've got real estate, renting or buying, depending on what you're doing, and other expenses, and to judge whether you would, with the same amount of money, get a better quality of life for you and your preferences. Now, if you go to Odesa in Ukraine, because I was there before, I'm paying around €2.10 for my flat white at the moment. So there you see, it's actually a big jump down from Moldova. It's almost half the price of Warsaw, so it's definitely going to be more than half the price of a similar city in Western Europe or North America nowadays. So that is a big difference. So you see that as you go further east, it does tend to get better value for money. Of course, there are other things to consider if you're going to go to Ukraine, like the fact that the war is going on. So that's what I would say about Warsaw. I think for someone, I saw someone asking about job opportunities in the region, then probably go to Warsaw, because there are a lot of international companies there. So if you're not someone who is location independent, managing businesses, say in Western Europe and North America, or have an online business that allows you to come and spend a lot of your time in this region, a lot of my clients end up creating businesses in this region as well, because that's part of the opportunities that they want to avail of. Then if you're going to be actually coming and working, it's not normally what I focus on with this channel, but if you are, then Warsaw is going to be probably your best bet, because a lot of the international companies there. One of my clients did say that he was offered a job, well, he wasn't offered a job, he was going to have a job interview, I think internally within the company, and put him in the Warsaw office, but then they offered him a salary that was a good bit down, and it didn't even cover the cost of living differential. So I think, so he wasn't so enamored of that possibility and do the interview in the end. So, but that is the reality, is that most of the international companies in the region are going to pick Warsaw, because it is the biggest city, it's got great infrastructure. So if you're that kind of person, then probably Warsaw. And Poland has so much immigration, despite what you might have seen on all these normally right-wing YouTube channels talking about Poland, where they started claiming that there are no migrants here. This is like, depending who you want to say is a migrant, but definitely people coming from other countries. Warsaw is, I think we'd have to look at the the statistics, but there are a lot of immigrants. It's not a city that there aren't immigrants, and that's because, in large part, because there's a lot of opportunities there. The other thing is, of course, with the war in Ukraine, a lot of Ukrainians moved to Poland. Also, people are fleeing Belarus, as I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream. So they've also moved to cities like Warsaw as well. So that is, I think, the big difference. It's a city that kind of draws a lot of people in. Warsaw, so if you're one of those people, that might actually be the good place for you to go to. I think to now pivot to summertime in countries like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. So the New Europe Baltic states, you got the Baltic Sea there, and it is not Baltic in the winter in terms of the coldness. You know, Baltic Sea, we always make that analogy in English that something is Baltic when it's really, really cold on the seaside, and so it's not like going to the Black Sea, which is, you know, where I have with Odesa, or if you go to Romania, you got Constanța on the Black Sea as well, a famous place, or if you go down to Varna in Bulgaria, where I think one of my clients might be going to pretty soon. He might be on the live stream. I haven't checked the comments, see if he's already on. So up there, it is definitely the time of year to go and enjoy it, because the winters are obviously cold being on the Baltic Sea, and there isn't a huge amount of sunlight in the winter, and there's a lot of snow. So in the summer, just all the vegetation comes into bloom, and it is really, really beautiful there. And it doesn't get too hot either. I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to see a lot of people wanting to spend the summers there, who are coming from very hot parts of the world, like coming from the Middle East, for example. Probably if you're based in Dubai, it's obviously really, really hot there during the summer, could go up to 50 degrees Celsius, I think. So it's quite attractive to go somewhere where the weather is nice, but not too hot. And we've had this heat wave in Europe. So yeah, the Baltics was probably one of the best places to be at that time. Riga as a city, Riga, for me, is always my recommendation if you are a single guy and you want to be in the European Union. I think it's one of the best cities to go to, because there's great nightlife. You know, cost of living, the value for money is still pretty good. Again, it's not cents on the dollar. And if you like tall, slim, beautiful, particularly blonde women, then you're going to find them galore in basically Estonia and Latvia, a little bit less in Lithuania. And well, you can also find them in Sweden as well. But it's one of the best places, the highest concentration. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are on the top 5 for the most models per capita, and that's because they are taller, slim, and renowned for their beauty. So the English level, just because that's a question that came up, actually in an interview, I should have probably said it at the top, with the original gangster of travel videos on YouTube, that is Gabriel Morris, Gabriel Traveler. I did an interview with him here in Chișinău, and yeah, we're talking a little bit also in that interview. I actually got the most interesting quote out of them after we stopped recording, unfortunately. So, but I know for maybe if we ever do a follow-up interview, I'll definitely get him to talk more. It was to do about traveling a lot in relationships. So, anyways, we did talk about it in the interview. We also talked about the level of English. He was saying that he was going to stop and actually settle somewhere and stop traveling so much that he wanted to go somewhere that the level of English was high. So he loves Greece, for example, even though he likes some of the countries in this region. He said, then I have to go and spend the extra time learning the language. If you're on a shorter trip to check it out, I mean, you can do all the touristic stuff in English. Of course, learning the language, local language is always an advantage. I know where it's not an advantage, because you can always just choose to speak English as well, even if you do speak a local language. But it's obviously an extra arrow in your quiver, and it gets you out of the tourist box straight away. You get treated more like a local, and in general, what's going to be better. Maybe there are a few exceptions where that isn't the case, but then, as I said, you can just speak in English and make it clear that you're foreign if it were to your advantage. But for doing all of the main touristic stuff, doesn't seem to be a huge problem if you're in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Also in Poland, I think it's also fine. Here in Moldova, if you go to Ukraine, Romania, also the level of English is probably even a bit higher than in Poland and in Europe Baltics. The level of English is lower in Ukraine and Moldova. Just be aware of that. I think, for doing really basic tourist stuff, it's not a problem to use English enough. Especially if people will speak it pretty well. And there are pockets of the city where you could hang out and just speak English. And I'm just thinking about the local, the foreign entrepreneurs last night. But he is learning the languages now. So he relied on English for a long time, but now he's kind of reaping the benefits of being here for so long and invested in it. So moving along, since Riga is my pick for the region, I said more and more of the guys on the consulting calls and also for the in-person experience now, there's uptick on interest in going to Riga. The other options are, of course, Tallinn. It's a bit smaller. I did spend 4 months there 2 winters ago. It got a beautiful city center. It's really good for as an IT hub. They have a very developed IT sector there. They were kind of the first ones in the region to set that up. It's got, known for its e-residency and efficient government, so you don't get physical residency, but you can set up your company there, and you can do it in, like, I think they claim in less than 20 minutes you can set up your company, have your bank accounts, everything. It's really efficient government, and it's a Nordic atmosphere. I have a video from over a year ago where, I think was it like 5 reasons they say to go to Estonia, and yeah, it feels like the Nordics, with being better value for money, a bit of a different immigration pattern. People came from the former Soviet Union, especially late in the Soviet Union, and they live in one area less than in general, as opposed to, say, being in Sweden or Norway, where they kind of have a more global immigration policy. So it gives it a bit of a different vibe. There's a Russian-speaking minority in Tallinn, for example. And yeah, I think for guys that are definitely very heavily involved in the IT, they have a big IT conference every year, and that's one of the reasons to be there. Would I pick it over Riga? It is a bit smaller, so it's hard for me to argue for Tallinn over Riga as a base, because Riga is the biggest city in the region. It's the most developed airport, so also flying to other places easier from Riga. There's Rail Baltic developed, so that will also link by train. You're a little bit further. You're more in the middle, I guess, of that Baltic area when you're in Riga. Tallinn is obviously closer to Helsinki in Finland, but then Riga is closer to Vilnius and getting down into Poland. That train will be coming on track, quite literally, pun intended, in the coming years. So yeah, for me, Riga is still the pick. And then you have Vilnius. Actually, the Lithuanian economy is now really strong. It's outpacing the Latvian economy and the Estonian economy, which was different in the past. Normally, Estonians were ahead of the other two over the last 30 years. So it's kind of very similar architecturally to Poland. So it's got a lot of Catholic history, a bit more than the other parts, just like Poland. But obviously, people are Lithuanian, not Polish in general. So it's kind of more relaxed atmosphere, I thought, there, even though it's doing really well economically. And yeah, at the end of the day, I would still see more of an upside in Riga, especially if you're a non-EU citizen, because you can get residency if you decide to invest in real estate. I have a video about investing in real estate there as well. Should be down in the description to this video. If not, I'll put it there in a card when I look at this, probably tomorrow for the replay. You can see I did a video there. One of you actually who has been regularly on this Sunday show, he's actually out there and met with the realtor that I did that video with, and was pretty happy with his experience. So definitely, I think Latvia is probably the pick out of the three, even though it's actually the laggard economically compared to Estonia and Lithuania. That gives it more of an upside as well in the future, especially in the capital Riga. So moving quickly along to the country where I've been to. So Chișinău in Moldova. So it is not a massive city. I think that's probably for guys who want to spend a lot of time here and have had clients who have spent a good amount of time here. That was probably the main drawback. It's like a city, 650,000 people. It's not Warsaw, which is like 2 to 3 million people, or Kyiv, which is even bigger, the capital of Ukraine, or Bucharest in Romania, which is again pretty big city. So that is probably the main downside to being here, and maybe infrastructure as well is still not caught up, but it is improving every year for at least the last 5 years. There are so many cafes and restaurants. That's what I was saying. There's more to do, more socializing, more parties than there's going to be in Minsk, even though Minsk is 3 times bigger. And definitely good cafes and restaurants. There's just like more here because in the last 5 years, there's just been so many places opened up in Moldova's capital. A lot of Moldovans that lived abroad, they brought back the capital and the ideas and really upgraded things compared to the situation here 8-10 years ago. It is pretty transformative, very upbeat on Moldova. It's a candidate for EU membership, and they have a target date of 2030, although in general countries miss it slightly, so it might be a little bit longer than that before they come in. What does it have? It has a great wine culture. First of all, the climate. The only thing that Moldova doesn't have is access to the seaside, because it's there in Ukraine, basically, that part of Bessarabia. Taking that aside, and that is something that for me makes Odesa more appealing as a place during the summer than Chișinău, but it's really the only thing I would say. The partying and the nightlife and the wine culture here more than make up for it, the cuisine, everything. And it's a good stepping stone, in particular with the Russo-Ukrainian war and Ukraine with the situation. If you are looking for a place that's maybe you have nostalgia for Ukraine from before 2022, then Moldova is the country, because it is the one that's the most similar to Ukraine, and thankfully we don't have a war here, at least not at the moment. I don't foresee that the Russians will get as far as here. And if someone asked me about Transnistria, I see Transnistria becoming a footnote in history in the coming years. I think just it will be harder and harder for them to justify being de facto independent when the rest of the country is just progressing so much quicker. And Transnistria is basically an economic basket case, like the Soviet Union was. So there you go. You keep the Soviet symbols on your flag, and what do you end up? Poverty and not much of a future. So the difference, say, between investing here compared to the other countries I've talked about, and even neighboring Romania. Romania's kind of in between, I think, in terms of development. It's obviously caught up a lot in the last few years, but their infrastructure isn't quite as good as Poland, and there's a lot more corruption for sure in Romania than there is in Poland. But it is heading in the right direction. Here, it's obviously hasn't joined the European Union yet, so there is going to be more of an upside. So you're getting in earlier, but at the same time, the city is smaller, 650,000 people, as opposed to Bucharest, which is obviously a metropolis of, like, I think it's maybe even, it's definitely over 2 million. It's maybe even bigger than Warsaw, I think, in the region. So it's only been smaller than, obviously, if we were to include Moscow and St. Petersburg in the debate, then they will be, Moscow will be the biggest city. But leaving aside the Russian Federation, then Kyiv will be the only city probably bigger than it. That is what I see here. It is very easy once you spend some time here to integrate, make friends. I found it really, really cool as a place. I love coming here during the summer. And it's a country that's also going in the right direction in terms of its economic development, a lot of opportunities. And the weather and the climate in this part of Europe, it's very similar to being, say, in the Mediterranean. Maybe it gets a bit colder here in the winter. It would probably be the main difference, maybe like northern Italy a little bit more, but they have long, warm summers. The forecast for the next few weeks is also pretty good. I think we're just going to have 1 or 2 thunder showers. That's about it. And what has changed from last summer? Not a huge amount, I would say. One thing I should mention is that on Friday when I came up, I was recognized 4 times by foreigners on the first day. And I think last summer when I was here for 2 whole months, I was recognized twice, I think. Maybe there was a 3rd time, but it was, you can see already a lot more foreigners. It's not as unvisited as maybe sometimes said that it's the least visited country in Europe, at least in that interview I did with Gabriel, Traveler, Gabriel Morris. That's what we described it as, but I'm not even sure it really is anymore. There are definitely a lot more people using the airport, a lot more tourists coming here. So it's not quite the hidden gem that it was or undiscovered by tourism, but if you're comparing it to being Western Europe, like, you don't have to queue for the winter sites here in the summer. That said, the guys were, they were super excited to be here, but interesting that I met there are obviously people who watch the channel who are here and enjoying Moldova. One thing came up, so one guy asked me about the dating scene, and I explained to him that if you're only here for a few days, it's being a weekend warrior, pretty tough, I think, in Chișinău. As a single guy, you want to be spending a good amount of time building up your social connections, even better if you can speak Romanian or Russian. Romanian is the official language of Moldova, but a lot of people also can speak Russian. Maybe amongst young people, it's probably still like 80-90% speak good Russian. Sometimes the first language, sometimes it's the second language here in Chișinău, in the capital. Not everybody, but most people do. So that is Moldova, still improving. When I do my update for my Moldova guide, Magical Moldova, it's down below, you can check it out there in the link in the description. When I update the hospitality, I have some of my favorite cafes, restaurants, bars, clubs. It is so hard to actually go to every single place that I need to check out, but I've gone to hundreds. There's just so many cafes, restaurants. Now they've been developing new ones along the river Dniester, which is not different to the river Dnipro, which is in Ukraine. This is Dniester, which is actually where the border for Moldova and the separatist enclave of Transnistria is. They've just been developing out that part also, especially since the last year. So there's just more and more options. Moldova keeps getting better and better every summer, a little bit, I feel. So yeah, it's a pretty good spot to come to, where you're going to have less tourism than in Poland and in Europe Baltics, and definitely down in Romania during the summer months. So you get that more of an authentic feel. That was one thing that also came out in my interview with Gabriel, the OG of travel vlogging. So coming quickly along, I'll just mention briefly Romania. Not just Bucharest. I'm not personally a big fan of Bucharest. It is a big city. I just never really gelled with a person myself. I have had clients who've gone and actually got residency there, and yeah, it's a big city. Obviously, it's been developing economically. It's a bit of an issue with, say, petty crime and being a little bit rough in the past. It has improved in that regard. I think the real gems in Romania, what I personally would be more interested in, is just like it's got beautiful nature up in the Carpathian Mountains. You've got Transylvania, and you have cities like Warsaw, Sibiu, world famous for their Saxon architecture, old architecture, really beautiful city centers. I did a vlog there. It's one of my favorite vlogs we ever did. I think it's one of the first ones we did with Gabriel as my editor. It was like back in 2017. One of my buddies, Feras, was in some of my other videos, and we went to Transylvania together. Legendary road trip. So cities like Cluj, which is capital of Transylvania. It's also a bigger city, a vibe, also a place that could be of interest to you. The city that I've gone the most to recently is called Iași. It is in the far east of Romania. It's close to the border with Moldova, and I went to actually Romanian Fashion Week there back about, I guess it's over a month ago. So they actually relocated they have a beautiful palace culture there, so it was in there. That was a pretty cool event. It's I think even the third city in terms of size in Romania, so also an option, obviously developing quite fast, I would say, as a place. So it could be more interesting. Depends courses for different courses for different courses, which one might be the best fit for you. I've had clients who have gone relocated to Romania, to Poland, now increasingly to Latvia, obviously here in Ukraine, and yeah, also partly to Moldova, although he's now moved on again. And the client who came here, and he must have spent more than 6 months in the space of just over a year here in Chișinău. He had obviously a good time. So coming to the last country that I should also say Kazakhstan, although I haven't been back out there this summer. It does get very hot in some of the cities in the summer in Kazakhstan at the height of summer, especially in Astana, the capital. You can get over 40 degrees there. I think the best time to go to Almaty, which is my favorite city in Kazakhstan, is in the autumn as opposed to now in the summer. Early summer, really nice, but it does get, because it's not anywhere near the sea. You can go to the lakes nearby, it's got beautiful mountains, but the best times are going to be, I would personally recommend going to Almaty. We were there definitely in June into July back in 2023. But it does get very hot at that point. A lot of people then take their holidays and go out of the city. So I think the optimal times are the early summer, and then maybe late August, September. As I say in every video, fantastic people. Kazakhstanis have this hospitality culture. It's definitely less visited, maybe not quite a hidden gem, but it's harder to get to, and as a result, it doesn't get so many people from other countries visiting it. And I mean, the nature around Almaty is absolutely stunning. It's between 2 and 3 million people. The capital, Astana, is about 1.5 million, with interesting, although it gets a bad rep, I actually like the architecture. It's more futuristic in the center of Astana. And up-and-coming country, different geopolitical situation, a lot harder to invest in and be secured if you are from North America or Western Europe than if you invest obviously in Poland or even in Moldova. So it's for a different risk profile, and getting residency is harder. They are doing certain things with respect to, say, crypto and stuff that might appeal to a certain type of profile, but again, it is not as going to be as secure. Although they did actually announce they're going to open up an area where you can invest, kind of like a free port, I guess it's going to be, where it's actually going to be English common law for all the arbitration. Everything's interesting because with my background as a lawyer, that's actually one of the jurisdictions that I'm qualified. So I don't know, is that going to be of some value to me? We'll see when it's fully implemented. I'm probably digging back into my legal past and background to help clients, who knows, in the future, or at least directing them in the right way with some local counsel in Kazakhstan. So that is the other country, other than obviously one that when I do all the surveys, I talk to you on these lives, and you're still most interested in Ukraine, even with the Russo-Ukrainian war. If you know the history to my channel, I started way back in YouTube with a language learning channel. Some people, even when the guys came up to me, he actually also came up to me last summer. He actually said he'd been watching me from even when I was making geeky language learning videos pre-2018. And then we were focusing on this channel between 2018 and 2019, really about coming and partying in Minsk in Belarus, Kiev in Ukraine, and Odesa in Ukraine as well. They're the three cities that basically I went to. I also did come once with one client here to Chișinău, actually with Philip. He also spoke Romanian. We had a pretty memorable trip. And then from 2020 to 2022, obviously it was all Ukraine. I was here during the entire COVID situation until the invasion, day 2 of the February 24th, 2022 invasion. So I left on February 25th, went first to Romania, then to Hungary, then back to Ireland for a couple months, and then I came back here again. But in spite of, I guess maybe in spite of the war, and in part probably because I focused so much of the content between 2020 and 2022 on Ukraine, it is still slightly the #1 country that comes up for your interest. Now, it obviously has a very different risk profile. Ukraine has an active war. That does not mean that it affects the security as dramatically in all parts of the country. Obviously, you will not be going anywhere near the front lines unless you are a volunteer, either with humanitarian work or a journalist or with the military. The Ukrainian military is not going to let you go to those areas. Anyways, you're probably going to be going to cities like Odesa, which if you are thinking of Odesa, you should be going in the next few weeks because it is high season of the summer. Weather is fantastic and people will be coming from all over Ukraine to enjoy their summer holidays. So it's really the time to be in the city. All of July, maybe a little bit also into August will be high season. The weather should stay good up until September. Other cities are, of course, the capital Kyiv, Lviv in the west of Ukraine, and you have Chernihiv and Uzhhorod, which are tourist cities that don't suffer from very many Russian attacks at all during this war. Lviv is affected less than Kiev and Odesa, and really nowadays, having just come from Odesa, there wasn't really that many attacks in the last, say, month or so. When I went to the Black Sea Security Forum, there were some attacks just after that, because I remember on the Sunday there was, but since then there haven't been so many. Moscow's been focusing on attacking the capital Kyiv most of the time, or other cities that are probably ones that you're not going to consider going to at the moment, like Dnipro, Kharkiv, Poltava, and Zaporizhia. When I say that, I remember that some of my clients actually have gone to some of those cities, in particular because they're looking at real estate or they have family reasons to go there. Now, statistical risk of some being in the wrong place at the wrong time, been injured or worse by a Russian attack in a city like Odesa, for example, is about 1 in a million. You can ask AIs to give you an updated risk assessment on it, but last time I checked, that was the ballpark kind of risk. So that's not very high per day that you are there. Like if you look at the stats for getting hurt or killed in an armed robbery in most American cities, it's actually way worse than that. So that puts it into perspective. Now that doesn't mean it's not risk-free, so definitely don't be cavalier with your safety. It is more a psychological barrier to go and listen to air alerts. You may hear explosions, you may hear air defense, and yeah, you might be in the wrong place at the wrong time, obviously, or see a blown up. You will definitely see the scars of war. You'll see a lot of flags that will be for obviously people who want to come and support Ukraine and document the journey. Then that's the reason to go. So that's not going to be something that probably puts you off. But if you are more reserved about coming, then it is mainly a psychological barrier. And for guys who write me, because some guys do that, they're going to be the first person to come when the war is over. I did an interview with Thomas Silson, who is a major investor in Ukraine, he's Danish, and he said he hears exactly the same line from some Danish investors that say, Thomas, as soon as the war over, we're the first people to come and invest. And he says, guys, you're going to be the last people to come and invest, because people want to position like up and take advantage of the opportunities. They are already there. One of the big things they get asked about is real estate. I made an analogy, a reference to it earlier about how prices now seafront properties going up in Odesa. The long and short of it is, and I have another live stream where I dove a lot deeper into, is one about the demographic situation in Ukraine. With respect to real estate, Odesa and Kyiv, it's kind of like 2021 prices. They are actually 20 to 30% higher in the cities in the west. That's because the western cities are further away from where the Russian forces are, and then cities closer, so we'll say to the east of Kiev or Odessa, then the prices are noticeably lower than they were in 2021, so they're down to 20, 30, or maybe even more than that, especially a city like Kherson, which is obviously afflicted a lot more by the fighting. So those are the cities where lots of the guys that I speak to are looking at, because see the biggest upside. Of course, you have obviously more risk in those cities than you would in cities further west as well. Either that they will be captured by the Russian Federation, although at this point I think most people realize that that's looking increasingly unlikely as a risk for any new cities been taken of any significance in Ukraine by the Russian Federation. But also there's always the risk that they fire a rocket and it hits your apartment. So you got to factor that risk in, even if it is relatively small. It is higher obviously than in peacetime. So those are the things about Ukraine just at the start to say. And it's not necessarily about my clients wanting to relocate right now with the war. A lot of them are actually really looking at it for the post-war situation. They want to position themselves early so they can take advantage of the opportunities, get themselves set up for maybe the reconstruction afterwards, and all the opportunities are going to come up with that, because it's going to be hopefully a once in a century opportunity. We don't have these wars again where a country is going to be rebuilt after so much destruction. So there's going to be a lot of infrastructure is going to be rebuilt, a lot of services are going to be built. I have the interview with Thomas Silson. We go into it in detail, and he's obviously someone with a lot of experience of investing in different businesses in Ukraine, so you can go and check that out. It's the last video on the channel. So important with getting yourself positioned for this new phase of Ukraine's history will be going there and getting the context, getting yourself set up, whether it's in business or you just want to buy your dream home, apartment, whatever it is, getting that bought now before prices are likely obviously to rise dramatically in peacetime compared to wartime. I think we can say that as a generalization, and building those local relationships that are going to be necessary for when the war ends, whatever that is. Normally, because I have a background in geopolitics and international relations, as well as being a lawyer in my previous background, also worked an academic background in international relations, specialization in this region. The long and short of it is that Russia, it's become obvious to almost every man and his dog at this point that Russia is in a world of trouble, their economy is in trouble, there are troops, and those more troops than they recruit every month. They've already burned through their Soviet era stocks. They even had to ask the Taliban in Afghanistan to send them the Soviet vehicles that were left, and the Soviets left there it's well over, it must be around 40 years ago, I guess, when they left. That's the dire straits that they're in, and they don't have any light at the end of the tunnel. So we'll see what Vladimir Putin decides to do in the next 2 months, really. Well, let's see, we got all of July, August, and September. So we'll say the next 3 months up until October, whether he goes for mobilization, whether he goes to try and freeze the front lines. We'll see what he says, set himself up to have both options. I have another channel where I dive deeper into these geopolitical topics, and when I get back to Odessa next week, I will film some updates on that. So go and subscribe to that channel and hit the notification bell so you get notified if you're interested in diving deeper into what is going on with the Russo-Ukrainian war. Obviously, there are 3 sectors, as I said, that are of particular interest to my clients so far. They are, as I've said in many of these live streams and videos, the real estate sector for obvious reasons, because of the potential upside in peacetime. You've got the agricultural sector because Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, and it will potentially have the biggest agricultural industry in all of Europe, maybe just dwarf the rest of the European Union when it eventually becomes a member in the future. And the other one, unfortunately, but it's the silver lining, I guess, from this war, is the defense sector, which, if you have been paying attention to what's been going on in the Middle East, you may have noticed that a lot of countries started firing off these Patriot batteries, just like at everything that was in the sky, and they're running low on them very quickly. So Ukraine in the defense sector offers solutions because they have had to develop countermeasures to the same Shahid drones, basically, that Russia's basically joint developed with Iran. And they have all these drone intercepts that work very well. I can tell you from my window that they work very well, because now they shoot most of the incoming drones out of the sky, over the sea in Odessa. The Ukrainian claim Ukrainians claim to shoot down over 95% of them. Of course, Russia fires a lot of them, so some of them get through. I obviously can't count personally myself, but they definitely shoot down more than before, is my impression from being on the ground. And they are working on prototype to replace the Patriot as well. So they will hopefully develop a countermeasure to ballistic missiles also pretty soon. But that's just to emphasize that the defense industry is one of the ones that is doing obviously very well in Ukraine. It's very lucrative and a real game changer for the country. Also, they were able to provide those services, know-how, training, and material to other countries as well. So it's going to have, I think, almost certain also after this war ends, Ukraine will continue to develop its defense industry. So there's a lot of interest in it for very obvious reasons. So yeah, this is the silver lining out of all this horrific destruction caused by the Moscow Empire and its revanchist and heinous attacks on Ukraine, is that in developing countermeasures, then Ukraine is a country that's doing a lot in the defense sector. So that is kind of a summary. And obviously, I've emphasized there with Ukraine coming in the summer to go to Odesa, I think in the next few weeks. Also Lviv, always fantastic in the summertime. Going to Kiev, never a bad time to be in Kiev, basically, in terms of the weather or the season per se. Obviously, with the war, with Russia having previously targeted Ukrainian energy installations, the winters can be quite difficult in certain parts of the country. So that is an extra reason, if you're going to come to Ukraine, then come in the summer and document it. You don't have to be a massive influencer to have some sort of impact by just documenting your trip, putting into your own news feeds and showing what life is like and the resilience of Ukrainians, and also the potential great future that we're going to have after this war is over. But that is basically the type of guys who have been coming to Ukraine. Either they have a Ukrainian partner, or there's someone who's convinced that they can make the most of the great opportunities that will be in Ukraine, that come to support the country and to inquire more about how they can also invest in Ukraine. So I also wrote down here common mistakes that guys tell me, or what I see, either from reading I have obviously a lot of consulting calls and with the AI, I read the comments, and I even more than that, a lot of guys come up to me on the street. As I said, there's 4 guys on just Friday alone, so I also get to see what they've been doing. And yeah, just thinking that this region is like cheap Europe. It's kind of from the past. You could argue in Ukraine because it's like so much cheaper that it's kind of cheap in that sense. But even Moldova, it's not super cheap. Gabriel was saying that in the interview I did with him, that like he was going to some luxury spa and he says it's great, but it wasn't really any cheaper than being in California for it. So I found that kind of interesting, or the US in general. So what other things do I see, guys? That they come for too short a time. I spoke to one guy who came up to me and he was just, for 5-6 days. It's really a tourist trip, weekend warrior. It's very hard to make an impact. You want to be thinking of coming for a few weeks and obviously positioning yourself properly to make the most out of that time. That's one of the things, obviously, that I help my clients with a lot, and that's the value in consulting, investing in that. For the single guys, the guys who haven't found the love of their life yet in the region, it's using dating apps or walking around in the street, just trying to mass spam girls. Of course, that can work every once in a while, but it's not a very effective strategy, and I don't think you find the best of the best doing either of those strategies either. I did do that video many years ago, a social experiment video in St. Petersburg, but I never did it again. I just didn't think it was really necessary. When you're spending a lot of time here, you don't feel that urgency. You just build it into your life, basically, the whole dating side as well. It's kind of just a treatment part of the networks and the opportunities and the place to get invited to. Like, I went to an event on Friday, I went out with some entrepreneurs last night, and of course, they know other people, not even, also the women who are not single, they have friends. You always get a warm introduction half the time, or like one girl, I actually know her cousin, it turns out. We talked today on Instagram, so I met last night. So yeah, it becomes kind of compounds here once you start to position yourself correctly. And obviously you just fly in, no local context, no local language, you're in the tourist box. I'm not saying it never works out. Of course, you could show up here and just spend a weekend, meet the love of your life, I guess. Anything's possible. The chances are extremely low of that happening. And of course, hanging out in only the tourist trap areas. This is a real thing that affects guys who go to Riga in particular. So you probably want to just invest in my guy. There's a shameless plug down below if you want to avoid them, because otherwise you'll do what almost every other guy that I talk to who goes to Riga without doing their homework first, is they end up in the tourist traps and they don't understand why I'm talking it up. There are even some, we'll put them quote unquote dating coaches who keep bashing cities like Riga, but they don't understand because they just went to the tourist traps basically. I'm guessing, and they listen to them. So you want to avoid that. I think that's really the lesson to be taken from that. So, there's obviously building your social circle, really important. Even better if you learn the local language. Paul in that video, the video comes along, talks about how it was a complete game changer for him and basically helped him meet his wife. So yeah, I know he's now settled down. So they spend longer, they try to understand the culture. Some of you are just not interested in the culture. That's also, I'm not telling you have to be, or you have to learn the language, or you have to develop a local social circle, but it's going to be a lot better if you do. And I used to have the experience of traveling around a lot and moving too quickly back in the day, and I did have the local social circle, and it was just like so ineffective compared to when you have it. I had to start from scratch every single time, figure out all the intel about where to go, all the local perks about everything. I mean, if you have the local social circle, they just like troubleshoot for you. And ChatGPT has obviously made a lot of things a lot easier, same with cell phones in general, like if your phone being a smartphone, than it was when I first came, but it's still, I see, holding a lot of guys back if they just kind of depend on being a foreign tourist basically on a short trip. They're not also thinking long term, just investing in themselves in the region, which is where I think guys they just get the most out of it in overall. With at this point, I have experience with helping guys in this region since we could really say summer of 2018, although it already really kicked off at the beginning of 2019. So what are we like over 7 years, we're coming up on 8 years since I had the first client. So that is what I would take away about it. And I emphasize this region. I don't say that Western Europe is terrible, that this is not a hysterical channel where we say the West has fallen, you don't need to flee. It's just that there are more opportunities here. And going to the Côte d'Azur, hanging out to the cool places in Cannes or in Saint-Tropez, or going to Italy or to the hotspots of Greece like Mykonos, also fantastic to do. It's going to cost you a lot more money, and investing there versus investing in this region isn't going to offer the same potential returns because they're just more mature economies. And that affects kind of everything, getting into the social circles, the dating opportunities, the investment opportunities. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's maybe more comfortable. The infrastructure is better there overall, but it isn't going to offer the same upside for guys who position themselves correctly, and that's why I think this is the real benefit of being in this region. It's not for everybody, so some people are just going to prefer to be in France or Portugal and Spain, Germany, wherever it is, or maybe up in Scandinavia, Sweden also. I have a great time when I go to a lot of these countries, so I'm definitely not hating on them, or they're kind of more passport bro type, so they're probably running around in Latin America, Southeast Asia, or Africa or somewhere, because they're looking for somewhere that's a lot cheaper. And probably that the women are looking for a foreigner to escape poverty to a certain extent, or just more into foreigners, or you have more of that foreigner factor for whatever their motivation is. Maybe just look different. That's why they're more interested in you. But it's not like that. I think just the quality is going to be a lot higher here in terms of the lifestyle. Again, if you don't like cold weather, it's going to be an issue here in the winter. If you don't like tall, beautiful women who are slim and European looking, also probably not going to be the spot for you. I'm not being sarcastic when I said there's a significant passport bro influencer who wrote, when I commented on his video, basically, he wrote back not very elegantly about, the Latinas are the place to be, and white girls are not worth anything, and so there are people who don't like tall, beautiful, model-like beauty. It apparently teach their own. I mean, I wouldn't have phrased it the way that he did. It wasn't very sophisticated, but he can have Latin America to himself in that case, or with the other passport runs, I guess, when he's down there. Not knocking also Brazil. I love Brazil, and they're going to play in half an hour, so I will be supporting them in the soccer or football this evening. So I used to hang on a lot of time in Brazil back in the day. So I think to sum this up before I come to your questions and your comments, like the smartest bankers don't where the smart men go. They don't wait until, just to reference that song from Lure again, they're not following the hordes down to Greece on holiday. Maybe I should have actually, well, I might get an issue with the copyright if I start playing the song here, but you can play it for yourself after the show. The smartest men don't wait until a place is obviously great. They invest in it before, so they obviously get the upside in terms of the place's development. And yeah, they just position themselves before the crowd. As I said, the hordes, like we had the hordes of the horde foreigners used to chase all the girls along the seafront in Arcadia before the invasion of 2022. They go there before the crowd arrives, basically, which will be now in Ukraine for sure, and to a certain extent still in much of the region. Obviously, places like Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia are discovered, but you still have more upside, I would argue, than in a large part of Western Europe. So the way I have my clients, I talk about it quite a bit on these live streams. Their links are down below. I said I'm super excited about the Conor AI function, especially when it's bundled in with the consulting calls. I had many of them actually in the last month or so, so I really see that's quite effective, especially with that post-call support that you get with the Conor AI. It's 24/7 available, and you can ask it the questions and it answers. Definitely British ChatGPT, like it's miles better than asking just an AI that's clear, because the AI, for some reason, I guess it just doesn't have my proprietary information and that I feed into my AI, so it gets closer. It's not exactly like talking to me, but I am improving it all the time, so it gets, I see it when it answers things that I wouldn't really answer that way. I can obviously change the way it answers, so over time it'll get more and more powerful. And yeah, you can answer a really edge case, or if you want a bigger strategic overview, that's what the consulting calls are for. But as I said, you can just invest in consulting call and it's bundled in for a few months, depending on which package you decide to invest in. If you want just the guides, actually that's another thing I should have probably already mentioned with the Conor AI. I have now fed in my guides to the region. So you can buy the guides separately, you'll get your own copy. It's a one-time purchase. They were down there for Europe Baltics, so Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, for Magical Moldova, for going to Ukraine during the war, for wonderful Warsaw, and for classic Kazakhstan. So buy all those individually down below. If you're just going to one country and just want to invest in that, it has my hospitality guys. That will just save you so much time. If you're coming even if you're coming for a few weeks, do you want to have to figure out what all my favorite places are, or do you just want to go straight to them? Because here in Chișinău, like 4 summers is a lot of fun, as I always like to say. But I went to a lot of restaurants that I wouldn't have gone to, even though there are great restaurants here in Chișinău in particular. If I was coming straight away, of course I would have gone to the ones that were recommended by someone I trusted before. So you just have, that's the really big advantage. Obviously you have a lot of other information about the logistics and the culture, about coming here in those guides, but that I think is the really strong suit of them. So you know there are links to those down below. I have them now fed into the AI, so if you're either subscribed to the AI, the Conor AI, or you have invested in the consulting calls and you get a package for several months with the AI, then you'll also get the newer updated versions that will be fed in to the AI as well. So you can literally just ask good questions about where to go and stuff. I think it's just another really powerful part of the AI package. And obviously, then if you want to have me in person, which is going to be the most fun way for sure to implement your strategy for this region, we go up to normally up to a week in a particular city. It is by application only. It has become more stringent in terms of the application process, and you can read about that. There's a link to it down below, because I need to see that it's a good fit for us to work together in person, and you'll have access to me. The crew will go out and just have an unbelievable, unforgettable time in a city in this region. I think is the best fit for us to go, if it is actually a good fit for us to work together, and you'll have me in real time to correct any of the maybe it's the dating side, and obviously we'll go on my crew, and we go to the place I think are the best, and just have I'll be lubricating the social atmosphere in that way when we go out and we party. It's obviously for getting to know people in a short amount of time. The social aspect is really important because you want to hit the ground running, even if you're going to stay on longer afterwards. And yeah, I just have some experience with seeing the common mistakes that other guys make, but it might even just be the dating, it can also be with networking with the right type of social circles that you want to get into, whether it's for business or just for some other social reasons. And yeah, you'll have access to my encyclopedic knowledge in person with you. So in-person version down below, go and check that out. And I have a few other things I might get to depending on your questions and comments. Let me see who's in the house. All right, the soccer starts in 32 minutes, so I'm probably not going to do a 4-hour Sunday show this evening. But let's see your comments and your questions. Thanks for the answers. Just want to see if you have been there. Okay, so he's talking about Transnistria. This other account, Sidi Kuraman, says, should he go to Moldova for working and get a better life? Well, it depends where you're going from. If you mean just taking a job, I find it unusual, unless you're in a certain profession that's in high demand in Moldova, that you would be relocating to Moldova for that reason. Should I live in Moldova? My dream is to go to Central Europe. Can I go to Central Europe from Moldova by work? So that just seems like you should invest in the AI straight away. There's just a lot of questions there. Will Moldova be an EU member in 2027? I said 2030 is the target date, so that's what they're aiming for. Jeffy says, hey Jeffy, just tuning now, won't be able to make yours a Riga thing, but it sounds great. Yes, Riga is, for those of you who are on the mailing list, make sure, obviously you're on my mailing list, that is where my most loyal fans are. And yeah, there was another interesting development with possibility to go as a group to Riga. Just go and make sure that you're on my mail list to get more information in due course, because I don't open up everything here on YouTube. I keep it for the most loyal fans on certain things. I get the first dibs. Jeff says that Riga checked many of his boxes, not cheap but affordable when compared to New York City area. Exactly, it's not pennies on the pound or cents on the dollar, but it is better value for money. And especially because I know Jeff is a non-US citizen, coming from North America, so also to invest in real estate you get residency, so that can also be very attractive. Sinan Spelgate was nice, cheap food, okay. I mean, something just when cheap was a good food. I think food in the Balkans is like meat on top of meat on top of meat. I prefer the cuisine in Ukraine and in Moldova for sure over Belgrade, but it's also, yeah, I had a good time every time I went to Belgrade. I think if you're a single guy, I don't know why you go to Belgrade. It's not easy. I would say as a foreigner there, harder probably than here. From my experience and my friends and clients' experiences who went there, maybe some others can provide an experience that was a bit better. Donald says to turn up the volume, we can hardly hear you with my phone turned all the way up. I think that might be your phone, but I will check the audio right now. No, it's maybe got a little bit of an echo. Is that what's happening? Maybe it's just the sound in this particular apartment, but it seems to be, yeah, maybe an issue with your phone. So I'm not sure what device you're using. Clip your mic to your shirt. Well, it is clipped, but maybe it needs to be up a little bit higher. But when I test the audio just there on my own laptop, it seemed to be pretty much normal. Joshua from Kyrgyzstan recognized your bro. Okay, so I guess you are here in Moldova. Good to know. Smart man have good microphones. Well, if someone else is telling me that they have an issue with the audio, then please write that and I will try to make adjustments. These are Rode mics, so if there are better mics on the market nowadays, then let me know as well. So keep your comments and your questions coming. Not too many questions there, more the comments. And yeah, did I have any other things that were pertinent? On the more relationship side of things, I had some interesting conversations with some of my clients about, because I watched a video, it was actually a Russian woman. She was saying that she's kind of a hybrid, she's modern and traditional. And it was kind of amusing because then she said, the traditional part is I like to cook and I like a clean apartment. I was like, is that how low the bar is for being traditional nowadays? But apparently, even to the further to the east of this country, of this region, apparently that's the way things have gone. I think the word is almost meaningless at this point. And I was also, because I talked to one client about it, and he was saying, yeah, because young women, they don't like to cook in North America, and I was thinking that all the women, every single girl, maybe it's just me, maybe I just intuitively pick women who like cooking, because all of my exes in Western Europe, North America, they all love to cook. So I don't know what it is about you guys, how you attract women that don't like to cook. Maybe I'm just saying, well, maybe I get a sixth sense about it. So it's not something, I think keeping a clean house is kind of like a step. I mean, who likes filth? I don't know any women really anywhere. I mean, again, maybe that's just my sixth sense, my radar on these things, but I didn't really notice a massive difference. If we're looking, on this channel we talk about dating women who are attractive and under the age of 38 for sure. I think a lot of these other channels, they're possibly talking about women over 40 a lot of the time. So yeah, there is a bit of a generational, it's like double generational difference. So I understand that they may appear a bit like women are in their, maybe a woman who's 40, quite often from Ukraine might be like a woman who's in her 50s or maybe in 60s from the US. But when you get like from 20 to 30, talking about being traditional, a little bit if they're from the countryside, with Instagram, with the amount of information, with culture becoming a little bit more, popular culture becoming even more global, I think. Well, US also able to export very well its culture in terms of cinema, TV, but now it's kind of from all over the world. There's kind of a more even playing field for that. So I just think that these kind of information gaps, they don't exist like they used to be. So I'm not really sure. Then there was another. I've always loved to joke on this channel that, and I'm not even joking, I think Italian men cook better than Ukrainian women in general. I'm not knocking Ukrainian women the way they cook or anywhere else, but it is what it is. I don't think, as things become more convenient with takeout, I think it's just everywhere in the world people don't like to cook as much. I think it's something that's regrettable, but then again, maybe I'm also, I eat out most of the time. So as opposed to Western Europe, I actually used to cook a lot more. I think that's one of the things about, for me, the cost of living being more attractive here was that, for me it was kind of I didn't see the benefit of buying own food and cooking it. From a cost of living point of view, it was just easier to eat out all the time. And since it was so good here, and for a fraction of the price in general of what we've been paying in other places, like I lived in Dubai briefly, and there, obviously it's quite a bit of a different situation in terms of cost of eating out in all these restaurants, spending hundreds and hundreds all the time every day doing it, as opposed to tens, or maybe it's €100 a day. It works out maybe a little bit less depending on what kind of restaurants you're going for, also in this region. So just younger people, I guess, are gonna see the economic benefit of cooking as being less appealing than a generation ago. So I think it's just going to be everywhere. I don't think that you're going to see, if you're looking, Italians love to cook, not just the guys, also the girls. So is it any more than Ukrainians? I'm a bit skeptical if that's really the case. Anyways, I've kind of gone off a bit of a tangent about that, because then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's a girl who's been in my videos. So I won't call out her name, but it was kind of funny because a lot of what I hear I guess it's coming from the manosphere, they say, women have unrealistic expectations nowadays in the West. They're ruining American women. They have these unrealistic, it seems to be just a phrase that gets used, a leitmotif. You could argue just means that they get higher standards and some guys aren't able to live up to them, but anyways. And a lot of times when guys are trying to sell this traditional values story here, they say, but the women here, they don't have these unrealistic expectations. But this girl was giving an interview, and she was talking about like how much money would you need you need your partner to make. And she said, 100,000 a month in USD would be ideal. Ideal. Well, of course it'd be ideal. But yeah, she said a guy making six figures, like just the basic six figures, no way would sell for. So that's the thing. Do they have unrealistic expectations? They once they understand what the global market is, like how much a lot of simps are willing to throw at them in Dubai, because you've been to Dubai, or in the richer parts of Europe, Western Europe. A lot of Ukrainian women have, with this war, even more, spend time in Western Europe. Maybe not as much in North America. But many of them have also gone to North America for the first time and realized that there's just so many guys willing to throw money at them. And now they have those kind of expectations to a certain extent. Now, for many of them, they will be unrealistic because they won't tie down a guy over the long term who makes that kind of money. They may end up in, obviously one-night stands or short-term flings with guys like that because they'll be, guys that'll be running through. So many of them. So you're going to end up, pretty much what guys complain about in the US, basically. I don't think it's not quite the same because the socioeconomic situation, the economic situation, not the same. Local guys don't have as much money. But now girls who are attracted by that, and they're not, maybe if they're 18, I guess they still haven't realized, but once they get into their mid-20s, I think most of them figure out this. And is it unrealistic? That was one of the questions I was just chatting to one of my clients about. He was saying, it's not realistic. Let's say she's able to date these guys, so because I know her. So for her, when she talks as an influencer about it, it's like me talking about dating the nines and tens. Not everybody's not realistic for most guys, obviously, to date in that very top spectrum. But she's not necessarily talking about what the average person is going to be able to achieve. So just interesting as a way to think about it. I've often quipped that they don't have traditional values, they have princess values. Of course, we're talking about attractive women who are younger, who are not like over 40 with a single mom or something like that, when they're coming with kids from a previous relationship. They may have more lower expectations just simply by, because it's harder for them, even harder for them to lock down a guy obviously who's making 100K a month. So, but put it in perspective, don't come to this region and think that they're all desperate, and if you're an average Joe, that they're all dying to leave with you back to America. I think those days did exist in the past, in the 90s for sure, into the 2000s. Not even sure really in the 2010s they really existed like that, but in 2026, probably not going to happen, and don't be taken in by the traditional values. I don't know. It's some other influencers call it a scam. I think it's not quite a scam to say it. They are a little bit more conservative. And again, if you're talking about women over 40, over 50, I guess they may seem even more traditional because they come from another era, basically. But if you're talking about attractive women under 38, I don't think so. Especially with this war, Ukraine's, many of them just have to leave for so long. So they've been living in Western Europe and they realize they're a lot more educated about it. So it depends. And just as a final point, because it came up with another client, it again ties into this expectations part, because like when he was in Ukraine, and this is self-described, so he said, I was in the top 1% of guys salary-wise. And now in the US, obviously it's not the same situation. I was still in the top 10%, but he said with his wife, there are a lot of expectations and he's finding it hard to keep up with them because she got into a relationship expecting to be in that social strata, being with guys in the top 1%. And even though she moved to America, well, being the top 10%, she doesn't seem to appreciate it to the same extent. So it can cause problems. That's what I described a lot. If you meet someone in one socioeconomic situation and you move them to another one that's less favorable to you and more favorable to her, she's very attractive. Obviously in Ukraine there are more attractive women on average than if you go to most parts of, say, the US. Of course there can be exceptions if you're hanging out at very exclusive parts in US society. So, and as he said, like he's still in the top 10%, he's no longer in the top 1% of wage earners. So it changes the dynamic, it puts the relationship under a lot of strain. So just be very aware of that, moving, it can be the big shot. I don't even think you're necessarily the big shot if you come to, well, maybe if you come to Ukraine because we do have a war on, there aren't so many foreigners when you're there, but if you're taking someone back to your country, back home, then the dynamics can change, and if there isn't a very strong emotional connection, then things can go bad. You're also coming to a country where Divorce rate is even higher than in the US, but again, there are some guys who just want to hear about the traditional values and have this fantasy, and they will get, you know, a lot of online grifters are going to take their money. That's for sure. They're going to be selling on bridges down in Broadway in that case. But that's how I describe it. I just thought it was interesting to impart that knowledge from the conversations with my clients and some of the real issues that come up that a lot of other people are pitching you something else, especially with the matchmaking. And if you're interested, I consider it a legacy kind of business almost at this stage, but I do have a whole playlist where I react to them. I do interviews with some matchmakers, one in Belarus, one in Ukraine. I also appeared on a channel in French. I also put the videos, I'm pretty sure, in that playlist down below. So you can go and check that out if that is what you're interested in. So any further questions and comments on today? And let me know also where you are planning to spend your summer. Maybe you're not planning to spend it in this region, but you want to come in the winter for some reason as opposed to the summer. Then let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you're watching this afterwards and your own experiences. No one has told me there's any issue with the audio. Maybe I've raised my voice a little bit since I saw the comment. And yeah, what else should I say about the coming weeks and the content? I have some videos. I guess I just have the one new interview with Thomas Sillison up since we had the last live stream. There will be a lot of content. Obviously, I recorded that interview with Gabriel Morris. I will have videos from here in Moldova, possibly more than one. Probably another interview, maybe two more interviews, plus the vlog, plus some other videos. I will plan to make a lot of content about Moldova since I'm obviously here at the moment, and I will come back again during the summer. Back in Ukraine as well, we'll be making a lot of new vodcast episodes, doing a lot of other interviews. So probably over the next 2 months, we'll see a lot of new content here on the channel. It's going to be super exciting. I think it's also better that I can film it outside and the weather is nice. So going to prioritize that for you guys, and probably be going back to the Europe Baltics as well. May stop off in Poland, in Warsaw on the way. I'm not sure when I'm going back to Kazakhstan. I'm supposed to be going back already, but okay, that has been postponed. But also looking back, as I said, I don't really want to go in the next month or two to Kazakhstan. I prefer to go in the autumn again, like we were last year, although we're really at the end when the good weather was. So September is a great month in Kazakhstan. I haven't been there before in the autumn. Do we have any more questions and comments? I think the biggest update for this channel since the last live stream, the last month, has been the Conor AI. I'm really impressed by it. So again, go and check out the consulting packages down below that include it for a few months or many months, depending which package you choose, or you can subscribe to it on a monthly basis. So that is what I say. I think it's the big development in Ukraine. It is full summer, and the nightlife is great here in Chișinău for sure. You do need to know where to go, but it is pretty awesome. I had good fun this weekend. And also in Odesa, in spite of curfew, just everything starts earlier. You can also party all night if you want, you just can't come out until 5 a.m. So it depends on what you want to do. And now it's high season, a lot of Ukrainians coming. They don't have any other seaside in Ukraine they can go to, so everything is so Odesa focused. It's going to be really a great time to be there. So if you are planning a trip to Ukraine, I would recommend Odesa in the next few weeks. Also Lviv, and yeah, after that I guess Lviv and Kyiv. If you want to go somewhere where the risk profile is virtually the same as peacetime, really close to it, not quite the same, very close to it, then you got Uzhhorod and Chernovtsi, two cities in the west of Ukraine, which are a bit smaller, but they are very rarely attacked, at least up to now, touch wood. So that's what I recommend there. If you're nervous about dipping your toes or putting your foot across the border, particularly into Ukraine, I would start there, or go to Lviv. It's also a risk profile that's less than Odessa or Kyiv, and it's also closer because you can travel from Polish city in the east of Poland, or come from Warsaw pretty quickly to Lviv. If you're coming to Odessa, then flying here to Chișinău is the best place, and taking the bus down, it's about 5 hours. Presuming that you are North American, from the Nativities, from Europe, from South Korea, somewhere that's allied with Ukraine that isn't, one of these passports where, you need visas for everywhere, then you should have visa free for 90 out of 180 days. and that's basically all you need. 3 months validity on your passport. Don't count it, obviously you got no validity left. And yeah, that's it. Your cards will work in Ukraine, the money changes everywhere, the internet should work all the time pretty well. It's definitely in the cities it should work fast even. There aren't really any blackouts. I think it went out in my apartment. Did it even go out it went out for a few hours once in the last 3 months. And really it was like, I think it was a scheduled outage, so I probably hadn't seen the notification for. So yeah, you don't really have to worry about that. That might be an issue in the winter, but right now that's not going to be an issue. And of course, put the air alert. Go and look at my content if you're going. Obviously the ones I shot, I have like a few videos from Ukraine in the last 6 months that I published, so go look at the last videos on the channel. I'll give you all great information about coming to Ukraine and what the experience will be like, and it's your opportunity to support Ukraine in this obviously important time of need. And who knows, next summer the war could be over. This could be the last time to come enjoy Odesa without all the foreign annoying tourists who are there chasing the girls en masse. When I looked at those stats, it's like prior to 2022 it was like 500,000. Maybe how accurate is the estimate? It told me there was more than 500,000 annual single male visitors to Ukraine. So think about how few compared to that are there at the moment. So that is a unique opportunity, and even bigger opportunity if you're looking at real estate or investing in those business sectors that are discussed, especially in that interview with Thomas Silverson. So I would encourage you. We'll have a program that's kicking off in September for the guys who are more serious about educating themselves for the post-war phase of Ukraine reconstruction, investing, all that good stuff. And there will be notifications for those who are on their mailing list. If you want particularly interested, you can send me an email at conor@conorklein.com and copy and paste it. My email is in the description to this live stream. So I don't really have anything else pertinent that I want to deal with on tonight's live stream. I do have another one scheduled for 1 month's time, and then one for post-summer, and then we will assess how the content will develop after. As I said, there's going to be a lot more of the vodcast coming up. It was something that has been requested by, I guess, guys who have been following me for many years. You want to see more of the vodcast again, and also, of course, the wonderful vlogs. But when I'm in Ukraine, I'll probably just do one summer vlog. That will be it, documenting what I think was of interest for you, as opposed to having lots of vlogs from many cities. I think that's just with the level of demand on YouTube at the moment for videos about Ukraine, especially about lifestyle. Obviously not like it was like back in the day. I think that's probably the best thing, but there will be vlogs coming from Riga at a certain point, hopefully this summer, from here in Chișinău, and from Kazakhstan when I get back there. But again, that might be only in September. We'll just have to see. There's a lot going on in September, so, and into October. We'll see how far along I get. Or maybe, in spite of my reservations, if you're interested in going to Kazakhstan, you really want to go this summer, I guess we'd want to go, yeah, because it's now early July right now, or maybe at the end of August would be the best time. So, any final questions or comments? Normally these go on for 3 to 4 hours, but today we're making it a bit shorter, and there will be the next one incoming in a month. And has the audio improved, or is it the same, or is it really an issue? I will listen to it attentively on the playback when I look at it afterwards. So I guess we're coming up to, at this point it's probably 1 hour and 50 minutes it should be on the Sunday show. This is New Europe Experience with me, Conor Klein. If you want to dive deeper in these topics and tap into my encyclopedic knowledge, you have all the options down below. You have the guides, the programs, the Conor AI, which is the one obviously that I'm most excited about recently with the consulting packages, and going to come in person, have an unforgettable time here in the city together, then apply for the in-person experience. Jeff says thanks again. Always a pleasure, Jeff. We will speak soon in person. Ronnie asks, can you compare which country has better traditional women who are looking for marriage and family life? Yeah, can you describe what you mean by traditional just briefly, because it might seem like I'm being facetious, but you will be shocked by the range of answers that I've gotten for guys over the years, especially in consulting, when they say the word traditional. So it's just, earlier on, if you missed it, I was talking about how one Russian vlogger said that she was a hybrid. She was modern and traditional, because the traditional part was that she likes to cook. But, I guess that is kind of traditional. I understand women used to do most of the cooking, but again, it's not actually something that, is it that more common? I'm a bit skeptical. Maybe it's just I have some bias. As I said, I just happen to pick women in general who are good at cooking, no matter where they're from. But I don't see a massive difference. Maybe with women who are over 40 or over 50, it's a different setup. But yeah, we're looking for marriage and family life. Well, the fertility rate here is really low. It's like, and I'm here in Moldova, I have to look at it exactly for Moldova, but in general, they don't have big families in this region. So, for women who are looking for marriage, but I think women are looking for marriage everywhere. They're looking for marriage in the US because of the family law. And then having a kid or two. I mean, the fertility rate is not higher here. It's not like it's 4 and in North America it's 1 or something. It's, if you go to Poland, it's like one of the lowest in the world at this stage. It's like 1, but everyone on the right of the political spectrum that does a vlog in Poland seems to say that they're all traditional family values, and they have a fertility rate of 1. So yeah, this is just a misnomer. So yeah, what do you mean by traditional, Ronnie? Just maybe outline. Do you mean that they're religious, that they have big families, that they are not promiscuous, that they are interested in getting married? Because definitely they're more willing to get married than, say, going to Scandinavia. It's a higher priority for women here, for sure. You said which country has the better tradition? Oh, yeah. And that's something that you should invest in the consulting, because we'd have to dive deep into that question. It's kind of like, you're going to answer, women are not looking to divorce you for money. Well, the divorce rate this is not just Ukraine, it's also Russia and Belarus. It's higher than in the US. So they end up in divorces. If you think by moving to the US where family law is it's going to be a lot more advantageous to them in general than in Ukraine or in Europe in general, then I don't see why you're expecting it to not be a concern. Family law here does not reward the weaker socioeconomic partner as much as in the West. That's kind of a complicated way of saying, because normally it's going to be the woman or the wife in the divorce. Not always, of course, there are women that also get screwed in divorce, but that's just not typically what happens. Nor is if someone gets a raw deal, it's going to be the other way around. And here, the family law basically really doesn't have alimony. It doesn't even really insist on child support, which I think is a problem. But absentee deadbeat dads are like a huge issue in the region as a result. And then the woman basically ends up having to find a stepdad to look after, to help out for the family. So, because family law doesn't reward it, you would think that they would have a very low divorce rate, but still, they have a lot of divorce. Now, do you think that it would be better if you move them? So, that's a question. Are you willing to move to the region, Rodney, or are you insisting on coming wife hunting and importing your wife back to the good old US of A with the way the family law is there? Well, I hope you have a prenup, just in general. Let me continue. Women looking for divorcing for money and traditional means in the old ways of loyalty, chastity, honesty, love. Are you looking for one from the 19th century? Because it seems like even in my grandma's day, I'm a little bit skeptical that chastity was always what it was, people were pretending it was, at least since the birth control came along. I'm not looking for one who's a good cook without the traditional. I think you're looking to be a time traveler. Maybe that sounds facetious, but that's the old ways of loyalty, chastity. I mean, you can find someone who's going to be loyal, who's not promiscuous, but you can also, and honest, that you can find them also in the US of A, or in Western Europe. that's just the reality. Thinking that women here are chaste, I think they're a little less promiscuous here than they're going to be in Scandinavia or in Western Europe or North America on average. That's kind of my impression. Of course, it's hard to measure, but if you look over the surface, it's kind of the same. Loyal, the divorce rate it's high, man. So I'm not so sure. But then again, if you go to Poland, divorce is lower. If you go to my home country, Ireland, so it's not that high. Honesty is not. Yeah, that's something you find more in Scandinavian Europe, I'd say. More Western. To be frank, it's more Western quality honesty than in places that have low societal trust, like in this region, because of the collapse in the 90s. I think it's improving. So, yeah, I think I mean, obviously women like that do exist, but, you know, do they exist that much more? It sounds like you want to go to some mountain village in, I know, some remote area, and that's actually what you mean by traditional. I don't know, up in the mountains in the Caucasus or something, but then will they marry a foreigner? Because if they're actually traditional, why would they want to? Presumably, let me see. So you would suggest not to bring the woman to Western countries, but to locate the fish. Yeah, for sure. I think just because you're going to take someone from an environment into another one and expect them not to be human beings and adapt to a certain extent, like the culture where you're moving them to. So yeah, I think that's kind of what this channel advocates in general. It's like, I'm not saying you have to live here. You could just be a wife hunter and be successful. I'm skeptical about the odds of that working out, but there are lots of examples where it does, so over the years. But then you relocate them back. And I always tell the story about one client who had married a woman from Russia in the late 90s. He met her in marriage agency in the 90s, right? So it was obviously a very different time. And he said that he was part of a group in Canada of Canadian men that were married to women from Central and Eastern Europe, so also include Poles and Slovaks. He said that 80% of the women divorced the men once they had residency/citizenship. So the big draw was the immigration. So then they're going to be cackling down at the beauty salon with other women. And I've even heard that from a guy, I think he was married to a Moldova, not a Ukrainian, and he came up to him in the streets in Odesa. He told me he had that situation in the US. She fell in with a bad crowd of women from the region, and they filled her in on family law. And if you think, I mean, nowadays we have ChatGPT, or whatever AI you want, whatever AI she wants to use. You don't think at a certain point she's going to Google family law where I moved to, I mean, or searched it. Yeah, I think that's just a bit naive. I think moving to the country, it's obviously you have to weigh that up. Is that something that you want to do, that you're going to enjoy, that's going to fit in with your life plan? But if it does, then yeah, it's more likely that it's going to work out. It's not 100% guaranteed. You wouldn't end up divorced also if you moved here, because as I say, the divorce rates are high here anyways. Chase, the extent I'm using is not being available to 21 men. Well, I think in this region, I'm not sure why you picked 21 in particular. I think, yeah, promiscuity is a little bit less, but there's no point in pretending that, you know, that they're all chaste virgins, or that they necessarily should have to be. That's their free will. And yeah, if you want to dive deeper in this, then yeah, you can, of course, invest in the consulting is down below, where we can get on a call and actually dive deep into whatever questions you have. But yeah, I think what I would say coming out of the questions that were running posed is, moving and spending time doesn't mean you have to spend all year, but coming, learning the culture, even better learning the language, having the local social circle. That's going to be not just better if it aligns with the lifestyle you want, of course. If you don't like the countries here, then obviously don't move here just hoping that you're just going to meet someone. That's kind of a ridiculous reason. It might still work out, I guess, on the dating side, but you're probably going to be unhappy. And then what, you're going to eventually want to come home, and then you're going to do this and, like, you know, bring you to another environment where it will just change the dynamic. So if you're going to focus, if you're interested primarily in meeting women here, then you're going to have to be it will be a better idea to spend a lot of time here and probably not bring her to a different environment overall. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to fail if you move back to the US or whatever. Just think that. I have a video from many years ago about the value gap. This is a big thing. I see it with clients that hadn't planned to move back with the war. They decided to move to the US. And one client has no problems that he's reported to me. The other client, he's, it's putting a lot of strain on the relationship. He feels there's a lot of expectations. Still be a top 1% Persian, but now it has to be top 1% US as opposed to this region, which is obviously a taller order. But maybe he'll up his game financially and make the top 1% because of his wife pushing him to achieve it. Let's see. So, yeah, I think that the big danger, Rani, is that if you are looking for using these terms, the scammers love, I'm not saying everybody uses them as a scammer, but the scammers, I love this. I love you're looking for the traditional ladies. They will pretend that there are all these chaste virgins who are just looking for a good man who won't divorce you, and they're all sitting here. And yeah, it's a marginal. It's questionable whether how marginal the difference is going to be, especially if you don't have a real man mindset. You can attract completely the wrong women, and then they're going to drain your resources, your money, your emotions, your time. So this is why you have a whole scam industry. And I see new variations of it, and they all focus on the word traditional. They just know that guys use the word traditional, they feel they can scam you. The scammers, that's why. And I've seen even courses, I didn't read much of it, but they were for women to basically be kind of gold diggers and scam guy, get the resource and guy, and they love to use this traditional phrase. Because then, you have to be a gentleman, pay for my lady, and pass on your resources, apparently. But so that's what I will comment on to that extent. That's my analysis on it. But you see that some women in the region or influencers claim that that cooking is all they really offer is traditional, and they still see that as enough for the traditional part. And I don't think that's even that common amongst the younger generation. I like it regardless. So I didn't have any problem dating great women in Western Europe or even North America. Okay, it was a long time ago. I realized that I lived in the States 20 years ago. The girl I was dating there was American and cooked amazingly. So that wasn't the main criteria I was using either at the time. So do I have more options for better looking women, maybe with values that align more with mine? Yes, but I wouldn't say it's night and day. I didn't go from a famine to a feast. But I talked about it in other live streams, I think, in the past, that it definitely was a difference. It was part of the attraction, but it wouldn't have been enough for me personally to actually just move here. I was also interested in the region. I thought there were a lot more, obviously things were better value for money. So I found it easier to live a lifestyle that I was looking for at the time, and I was generally interested. I studied the region, Oregon, learning the languages and the culture. So it doesn't even mean that I will stay here 100% of the time forever. No, maybe I'll even later on mix it up, because one of my clients is giving me food for thought. He's spending a lot of time in the Côte d'Azur at the moment for 1 month, skiing in the Alps, kind of thinking, do I need to start mixing it up again like I used to do a decade ago? But with this channel, because it has this focus, unless I change the focus of the channel to accommodate that, then I guess I'm going to be focused on this region. Anyways, I've given a little bit more time to that. The soccer's already kicked off. Força Brazil for this evening, unless I mixed up the time, but let's see. World Cup Brazil. Let's see if they're playing right now. It's already started. Yeah, it's Norway, and it's already 7, I guess. Why does it say 6:30? Oh, it's giving me by the second here. So, we're 7 minutes into the match. I'm going to go watch it, unless any of you have a final question or comment. I guess I'll give you about 10-15 seconds, otherwise I'm going to move on here. But if you want to dive deep, I think that's the main takeaway. There's obviously a lot of nuance when you try to dive, burn down on these topics and figure out if it's a good fit for you. Because do you want to, like in someone in Ronnie's situation here, is he going to now spend lots of time if it's not really going to be a good fit for him? Is he going to start, the main scam I would see is like letter writing, PPL scams, the online talk scams, because they will just get the chatbots. I think with AI and becoming more complex, people can now understand it. Yeah, they're going to have an AI bot that's going to tell you that they're traditional, it's going to have a photo, and it's going to be complete BS. That's the problem, right? These paper letter sites. So do you want to risk ending up, like, sometimes it's scammed out hundreds of thousands? Or you meet someone who's a real person, but then they're not what you thought they were. They're just selling you a bridge in that sense. So yeah, it's really important to avoid squandering your money, your time, and I think for a lot of guys psychologically their emotions, because a lot of guys get destroyed by this. I've done calls in the past with guys where effectively I end their imaginary relationship on the phone, and I do it within. One time it was literally within 2 minutes, and yeah, it's like it was a real breakup. It's pretty, these scammers are pretty ruthless. So definitely don't, risk that. Book a call. That's the main takeaway. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to wrap it up. So guys, those of you who are here, have a great evening. Ustaro Bună, as we say in Chișinău. I'm really pumped. It's been a great last few days here in Moldova. I'm super excited about it. It's interesting also, guys coming up to me and giving me their field reports of being here. And again, it kind of reinforces what I teach on this channel, that this is the opportunities for those who position themselves early and invest and educate themselves early on, and don't come here as a weekend warrior expecting it to be easy or cheap. Europe to that extent. So I'll leave you on that note. Good luck to Brazil in the soccer. Maybe some of you are going to cheer for Norway, but at the end of the day, Brazil, one of the things that I still love about that part of the world, the Brazilian fans and the atmosphere. So until next month on this Sunday show, I bid you a great time. I hope you enjoy your summer. Even better if it's going to be in part in this region, and we'll catch up pretty soon. A lot of great content coming up. Maybe not quite next week, but in the next few weeks here on the channel. Ciao, ciao, la revedere. Goodbye in Romanian from Chișinău, the capital of this country, Moldova.